Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. Brothers and sisters, I want to ask you to close your eyes for a moment and imagine that you're going to die tomorrow. What are the first things that come to mind that you need to sort out? Who are the people you need to reconcile with? Who do you have to forgive? And who do you need to ask forgiveness from? Perhaps the most important question is, will you have enough time to do everything you need to do? The great thing about being over 50 is you have a revised perspective on life. There must be something about turning 50. Perhaps it's the midpoint of our adulthood, and so we can look back and forward 30 years. The road to death is now a downhill run as we pass the peak of our adult years. In a sense, this is a grace from God. The grace to realize that most of what we do and achieve in our lives, or what we think is important, is likely to come to nothing in the end. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. Brothers and sisters, we are very blessed to be Christians. We've been given a great gift from God, and especially in the Bible. Made up of stories, teachings, prayers, laws, and songs, it provides us with a guide on how to live, and even more importantly, how to look at life. We are particularly blessed to have both the Old and New Testaments in our Bible. In the Old, we have books such as Ecclesiastes and Lamentations, which are in a sense the groaning of the human person, both old and young. They don't speak so much about what God is doing or teaching, but about the human condition, about suffering, injustice, evil, punishment, futility, the consequences of our actions, death, nothingness. With the Old Testament alone, we cannot find the answers to these perennial questions of humanity. Take the first reading, for instance. King Solomon, having achieved so much in his life, now feels a strange emptiness as he passes the prime of his life. Without a knowledge of eternal life, earthly achievements seem empty. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. How many of you brothers and sisters feel the same when you look back at all your hard work over many decades? How many of the projects that you worked on have since been binned or demolished by others? I can say for one who is past 50 that it seems that there was so much toiling under the sun in my early years, as the book tells us. So many hours and days and weeks and years studying, building, training, working, etc., etc. If it was not for the New Testament, the story of Jesus, who he was and what he taught us, and his ultimate purpose, we may very well be caught up in a never-ending lament and despair, like King Solomon and Jeremiah. But thanks be to God, as I said, we have Jesus and the New Testament. For it is Jesus in the Gospels who puts everything into perspective, who teaches us about eternal life, about the resurrection of the body, about the meaning of suffering and death, about the real purpose of our earthly lives. And in today's Gospel, brothers and sisters, Jesus gives us an example to help us to understand what is really important in the end. In the story, a man recognizing Jesus' character seeks his help to get his share of the inheritance. Jesus is a just man, so why wouldn't he help him to obtain earthly justice? Interestingly, Jesus neither concurs his inheritance rights nor strikes them down. He only asks, "My friend, who appointed me your judge or the arbitrator of your claims?" Could not Jesus as God have been the most just arbitrator for the man? Of course he could have, but he wanted to make a point that he didn't become incarnate for the sake of earthly justice, even though this may be an implicit part of the commandments affecting our neighbours. The ultimate purpose of his coming into the world was to fulfill heavenly justice. He came to make atonement for the sins of humanity against God by becoming a man who could make atonement on behalf of humanity, while at the same time being God, he could make adequate and sufficient atonement to the Father. Ultimately, earthly arguments and fights over justice are secondary to our eternal salvation. And as Jesus stressed, no amount of earthly wealth makes a person's life secure. What's important is making oneself rich in the sight of God. So, brothers and sisters, let us thank God for old age, which helps us to put everything into perspective. That having come to realize vanity of vanities, all is vanity, we can put all effort in the last years of our lives towards our salvation, by doing the only thing that matters in the end, making ourselves rich in the sight of God.